All right. Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Hello. Welcome to the Seattle Atheist Church. Atheists, agnostics, skeptics, free thinkers, questioning and believers. Whatever you like to call yourselves, you are welcome here. At the Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural promoted from this podium. Seattle Atheist Church was founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. Truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to other conscious beings. We believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. If that sounds good to you, then you're in the right place. I'm going to skip over the announcements today, unless there's any big announcement we should bring up. We just did there is a big announcement, yes?
106.9 is playing Christmas music.
Nice, okay. So don't dial to that station. Is that what you're saying? Don't dial to that? Oh, okay, all right, Christmas music.
The deity around.
Oh, okay, all right, okay, fine. Let's see, we just had our secular social yesterday. It was great. I recommend everyone going to it. And let's see, what else do we got? Oh, reminder to RSVP. So more people will come, the more people sign up to this thing. So it's great if on Meetup you can actually RSVP when you come, because that actually encourages more other people to come, because no one wants to come to a Meetup that has 3 people in it. And we obviously have more than 3 people coming to it, so it helps bring more people in. Other thing to announce is Amazon Smile program. Come on, Christmas is coming up. You're buying presents for people. If you do it through Amazon Smile, part of that money will go to donations to the Seattle Atheist Church, which is a good thing. If you sign us up, yeah. And you can reach out to any of us for instructions on doing that. Other thing I should mention, why not a nice atheist shirt for a Christmas present? On the website, if you go to the donation area, which you should all become very familiar with, the donation page, there's a place where you can buy one of these nice Seattle Atheist Church shirts for yourself or for your family members. So you just hit that button.
What's the website?
Oh, I'm sorry. Good point. Thank you. So it's at seattleatheist.church. It's a little confusing because it's not .com. We actually have that as well, but it's seattleatheist.church. And then there are tabs. There's a donate tab at the top. The other thing on the site are previous talks, which are really great. If you want to see any of the previous sermons, there's a lot of good ones up there, like over 150 now, which is pretty amazing. They're all up there. There's links to all of those on the website. Okay. So, if you find these talks valuable and you enjoy the discussions afterwards, please consider donating to support us. Your donations enable us to rent this room. It takes 23 people donating $5 each week for us to break even. And any shortage is covered out of pocket by Troy and Jack or by the Walthers. Of course, we really want to do better than break even. We want to build up a surplus so that we can start promoting this church at events during the year. So again, donate button, or you can reach out to Troy. Where's Troy? Troy right there. He has a money-taking machine, so just reach out to him if you want to do a direct donation today. Another important way that you can contribute to the church, a more important way, actually, is by inviting other people to come with you. We're trying to build a community. The more people who participate, the more diverse views we have, the better the church experience. So please invite your friends to come to the church as well. All right, on with today's talk. So here at Seattle Atheist Church, we have a quarterly planning meeting where we select the talks. These are the talks that you have selected to do. Today, Jack is giving a very important talk. I'm really looking forward to this talk because it's a talk on how to disagree well. So I'm looking forward to that. Are we going to, actually we're going to do joys and sorrows, right? No, you want to do the talk. Let's just go directly to the talk. Let's do it.
Hi, folks. All right. Today I wanted to give a talk about how to disagree well. With Thanksgiving coming up soon, this seemed like a timely topic for a talk here at church. It's a big topic that, with lots of aspects to consider. My goal here, though, isn't to comprehensively cover all that there is to cover, but just to add a few tools to your toolbox that will help disagreements be more productive, and point you towards some great resources for further study if you're interested. Before I get started, though, I wanted to call attention to Eva's talk a few weeks ago about how to persuade people not to believe irrational things. I missed church that week, so I didn't get to see it in person, but I did watch it on YouTube on our Seattle Atheist Church channel, and it's pretty awesome. Seriously, go watch it if you weren't here, or if you want a review. There's a lot of practical, applicable advice in there. Another great resource along these lines is the book Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High, which I can't recommend highly enough. Looks like this. Ruth did a couple of talks about the material in this book a few years ago, which you can also find on our YouTube channel. Another great resource, which I'll draw most of my talk from, is a book that just came out last month, How to Have Impossible Conversations, by Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay. It's subtitled A Very Practical Guide, and they mean it. It contains 36 techniques drawn from, they say, the best, most effective research on applied epistemology, hostage and professional negotiations, cult exiting, subdisciplines of psychology, and more. It has a simple format, organized by difficulty of application. Fundamentals, basics, intermediate, advanced, expert, and master. The author's advice, which they reiterate after every chapter, is to take your time with each chapter before moving on to the next. More advanced chapters build on earlier chapters. So to make the best use of the book, you need to have real face-to-face conversations in which you practice the techniques you're learning chapter by chapter before moving on to the next. What follows?
What was the title of the book again?
How to have impossible conversations.
Yeah, How to Have Impossible Conversations. What follows are a few brief selections from the book, lightly edited for length, and to make them easier to say out loud. I claim no credit for the work of Boghossian and Lindsay. So first, what is an impossible conversation? When the authors say impossible conversations, they mean conversations that feel futile because they take place across a seemingly unbridgeable gulf of disagreement in ideas, beliefs, morals, politics, or worldviews. They don't mean exchanges that occur in situations in which some people are absolutely unwilling to speak with you. When someone refuses to speak with you, there's no conversation to be had. No book can teach you how to force someone to converse if they won't speak with you. These circumstances, however, are exceptionally rare. Most people will engage you most of the time on most topics. Although productive discussions with people who hold radically different beliefs can be extremely difficult, they're only literally impossible in fringe cases. Usually, the more invested someone is in their beliefs, the more they want to speak about them. The difficulty in these cases isn't having someone speak to you, it's that the give and take seems hopeless because the person across from you fails to speak with you and instead speaks at you. In such cases, you're viewed as a receptacle to pour ideas into, or as an opponent to be debated and vanquished. How to Have Impossible Conversations teaches you how to have conversations with anyone who's willing to speak with you, even though those people and those conversations seem impossible. Maybe someone's angry, or maybe your political differences seem so profound that civil discussion feels impossible. But if someone's willing to talk with you, even if you're an extremist, even if they're an extremist, die-hard believer, or intense partisan, this book will teach you how to effectively communicate with them. Of course, it's easier not to engage in conversations with those who hold different views, but avoidance is not always possible. Someone might approach you. You might find yourself trapped with friends or family when religion or politics comes up. Or you might find the topic too important to leave alone. When you find yourself in these situations, it's far better to know how to navigate than not. This book will empower you to handle such conversations even when they become heated. It'll give you options. So to start with, I wanted to pick out two skills at the fundamentals level that I thought were particularly important: partnerships and intentions. Starting with partnerships. The way to change minds, influence people, build relationships, and maintain friendships is through kindness, compassion, empathy, treating individuals with dignity and respect, and exercising these considerations in psychologically safe environments. It comes naturally to all of us to respond favorably to someone who listens, shows kindness, treats us well, and appears respectful. A sure way to entrench people in their existing beliefs, cause disunity and sow distrust, is through adversarial relationships and threatening environments. It is easy to dislike someone who is mean-spirited, treats you poorly, doesn't listen, or disrespects you. You can doubtless recall examples from your own life. Fortunately, it's fairly easy to create trusting, safe, communicative environments and avoid conflict. Here's how. View yourself as a conversation partner. That is, treat others as if you're working together to have a fruitful conversation, because you are. Seeing your conversation as partnerships is the single biggest step you can take to ensuring conversations stay civil and to building relationships instead of damaging them. Adopting this stance is also surprisingly easy. How do you switch from viewing people as opponents, moral degenerates, or even enemies, to valued partners and collaborators? You shift your goal from winning to understanding. Make understanding your conversation partner's reasoning your initial goal. Abandon adversarial thinking, like conflict, strife, debating, ridicule, and the idea of winning, and adopt collaborative thinking, cooperation, partnership, listening, and learning. Shift from, this person is my opponent who needs to understand what I'm saying, to, this person is my partner in a conversation, and I can learn from him, including learning exactly why he believes what he believes. So you may be saying to yourself, well, I could talk to a lot of people like a partner, but I couldn't do that with a racist. Well, yes you can. If the black musician Daryl Davis can have civil conversations with Klansmen and help them abandon the KKK, and he has a closet full of their relinquished hoods to prove it, then you can talk to a racist, or to anyone holding any belief system, and discover why they believe what they believe. One key to realizing you can have seemingly impossible conversations is recognizing that discussions are natural learning environments for both people. Treating an individual as a partner in civil dialogue does not mean accepting their conclusions or buying into their reasoning. It means thinking along with someone so that you can understand not just what they believe, but also why they believe it. In that process, maybe they'll come to understand your reasoning, or see that their reasoning is in error. Or maybe you'll discover that you're harboring a false belief. Conversational partnership isn't about agreement or disagreement. It's about civility, charity, and mutual understanding. At worst, you'll have to endure hearing something truly vital, in which case you'll come away from the conversation with a better understanding of why people hold repugnant beliefs. More likely, though, you'll foster comfortable conversational environments, build relationships, better position yourself to understand and address similar arguments, and maybe even revise your own thinking. There's a catch, of course. You can't control someone else's behavior. You can only control your own. So you have to be the one who initially attempts to understand your conversation partner's reasoning, even if they're unwilling to reciprocate. You'll also have to take an active role in establishing and maintaining the partnership dynamic, and of course, be ready to walk away if that becomes impossible. On to intentions. People do not knowingly desire bad things. Individuals act, believe, and desire based upon the information that they have. If they had different information, they derive different conclusions. For example, physicians used to treat patients with leeches because they thought diseases were caused by an excess of blood. They attached leeches to patients because they wanted to help them. They desired the good, to improve patients' health. But they didn't have information that we have now, which is that excess blood is unrelated to disease. We all have an impulse for goodness. However, lacking a comprehensive picture contributes to the failure of arriving at correct conclusions. When you encounter a person with radically different beliefs, you might think that they're ignorant, crazy, or malicious. Resist this inclination, and instead consider that they view issues from a different perspective, or that they're acting upon what they think is the best available information. Chances are far better that they mean to help, but they aren't great at communicating, than that they're actually ignorant, crazy, or malicious. The intentions and motivations you assume in your conversation partner are likely worse than their actual intentions and motivations. Assuming your partner has malicious intentions stifles your conversation. It halts cooperation and undermines the possibility of using that conversation to arrive at truth. It may also make your words seem snarky and put people on the defensive, which will make it less likely that they'll change their beliefs. Even more damaging to conversations is that making negative assumptions about your partner's intentions makes you less capable of listening. If you must make an assumption about your partner's intentions, make only one. Their intentions are better than you think. People don't knowingly desire bad things, so assume your partner has good intentions. Internet trolls and psychopaths are distinct exceptions and are covered in Chapter 7, Master Level, which I won't cover here. Here's how you can immediately apply this. First, if your partner assumes you have bad intentions, do not waste time trying to convince them otherwise. Instead, switch the conversation from your intentions to your reasoning. Say, I absolutely do not want to be wrong for one more instant than I have to be. If something's wrong with my reasoning, please let me know. 2, if you start to assume your partner has bad intentions, switch to a frame of curiosity. Consider that they may know something that you don't know. Say, I'm having a hard time understanding where you're coming from. I assume you must know something about this that I don't. Could you tell me more about where you're coming from on that so I can understand better? Admit frustration. Say, I'm feeling frustrated. I want to understand where you're coming from. I'm also unclear about your intention. Could you tell me what is your intention? This is an open-ended question that leaves room for interpretation. If they respond, what do you mean, what's my intention? Reply, what are your hopes for this conversation? What would you like to get out of it? Often, people you find frustrating are just trying to help. Equally often, they're doing so from the messenger stance, delivering messages, instead of from a collaborative stance. That's why they frustrate you. Finally, do not feed the trolls. In internet speak, trolls are people who do have bad intentions and act maliciously. Trolls are toxic to conversations. Let them waste their own time. Stop playing their game. Block or mute their accounts. You're under no obligation to engage someone whose goal is to irritate you. Never be bullied into having a conversation. Only have a conversation because you want to, not because you're being harassed for not speaking to someone. Consent applies to all participants. At the beginner level of skills, I wanted to briefly touch on modeling and then talk about acknowledging extremists. So, they advise, model the behavior you want to see in your conversation partner. If you want her to answer a direct question, then answer a direct question. If you want her to be patient and listen, be patient and listen. If you want her to start screaming, start screaming. If you want your partner to be open to changing her mind, be open to changing yours. If you want them to be civil, be civil. If you want them to give ground, give some of yours. If you want her to listen to you, listen to her first. Say, I don't know when you don't know, to model honesty, humility, and sincerity. Model other behavior traits that are key to effective, successful conversations, like listening, curiosity, openness, fairness, charity, that is, not assuming bad intentions, give and take, and the willingness to change your mind. Model clarity. Avoid jargon. And unless you're a quantum physicist, avoid using the word quantum. Do not model bad behavior. Don't interrupt people or treat them rudely. If you want to be treated with kindness and civility, be kind and civil. If you want your views to be treated charitably, treat your partner's views charitably. This advice is easy to hear, yet difficult to follow. But it's indispensable, especially when speaking with people with whom you disagree. It's also crucial to preventing conversations from becoming derailed. And now about acknowledging extremists. To win your partner's trust across a moral divide, you must be able to demonstrate that you care about your partner, and especially about the values that your partner cares about. Even if your partner cannot see you as being on his moral team, for him to trust you, he must at least be able to see you independently from his enemy's team. If you fail to do this, few will care what you have to say or why you're saying it. Unless you can distinguish yourself from the people on your side, who your conversation partner considers the most frightening, you'll never gain their trust. They'll never care how much you know about topics near to their deepest concerns, like religion, morals, and politics. It almost always helps a political and moral conversation to find areas of moral agreement. And one easy point of agreement available in almost every conversation is to point out how extremists on your side go too far. If your partner is on the other side of the political divide, she will not trust the extremists on your side, which makes an easy point of agreement if you can express the same sentiment. Because of our polarized media environment, she also likely knows more about your extremists than about more common moderate expressions of beliefs on your side, and the best arguments for those. The media adage, if it bleeds, it leads, tends to amplify lunatics. In other words, your partner across the divide is likely to unfairly attach beliefs about extremists on your side to you. Extremism fosters tribalism, polarization, unwarranted skepticism, distrust, defensiveness, and, frustratingly, unfair caricatures of the other side's views. Worse, extremism on one side drives people to reciprocate with extremism on the opposing side, or an opposing side. Think of neo-Nazis and Antifa. You can turn this disadvantage to your advantage, however, by explicitly disavowing your side's extremists. Acknowledging extremists will help your conversation partner see that you, someone on the other side, recognize outrageous problems on your side, do not support them, and are not a zealot. This acknowledgement will assist in diminishing moral gulfs because it separates you from your moral tribe, while identifying important common ground with your partner. For example, did protesters for a cause that you support turn violent and vandalize property? Did they try to squelch more moderate voices? Did they behave like screeching children and shout over people trying to voice an opinion? Did they create massive societal disruptions that inconvenienced innocent people? Did they resort to slurs? Disavow all such behavior, no matter who does it. Instead of placing yourself across the divide by attempting to excuse incidents like these, you'll immediately find yourself on the same side by agreeing to be against the extremists on your side. This can be a basis for trust and a safe point of agreement from which deeper conversations can emerge. In the interest of time, I'll share just one of the 6 concrete ways to put this into practice. And that is to avoid characterizing their side as being accurately represented by their extremists. Remember the part about modeling before. Characterizing your partner's side, or your partner, as an extremist is likely to defensively trigger him to characterize your side, or you, as one. At the very least, by talking about their side as though it is the fanatical or vile one, you are almost guaranteed to make them think about your side in the same way. So that's all I'm going to share from Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay's book, How to Have Impossible Conversations. Of course, I barely scratched the surface of all the advice they have, so go get yourself a copy. Before I wrap up, though, I want to add one more tool to your toolbox, and that is a hierarchy of disagreements. In March of 2008, Paul Graham, the co-founder of Y Combinator, published an essay called How to Disagree. I first encountered the material on a blog called Common Sense Atheism under the title A Hierarchy of Disagreements, which describes it as a way that we can quickly label disagreements, which will help us choose what to bother reading and responding to. If this is done by enough people, it may even improve the quality of internet disagreement. Here's what Graham had to say. The web is turning writing into a conversation. 20 years ago, well, over 30 years ago now, writers wrote and readers read. The web lets readers respond, and increasingly they do, in comment threads, on forums, and in their own blog posts. Many who respond to something disagree with it. That's to be expected. Agreeing tends to motivate people less than disagreeing. And when you agree, there's less to say. You could expand on something the author said, but she has probably already explored the most interesting implications. When you disagree, you're entering territory she may not have explored. The result is there's a lot more disagreeing going on, especially measured by the word. That doesn't mean people are getting angrier. The structural change in the way we communicate is enough to account for it. But though it's not anger that's driving the increase in disagreement, there's a danger that the increase in disagreement will make people angrier, particularly online, where it's easy to say things you'd never say face to face. If we're all going to be disagreeing more, we should be careful to do it well. What does it mean to disagree well? Most readers can tell the difference between mere name-calling and a carefully reasoned refutation, but I think it would help to put names on the intermediate stages. So here's an attempt at a disagreement hierarchy. Level 0 is name-calling. This is the lowest form of disagreement, and probably also the most common. We've all seen comments like this. You, the letter U, R, the letter R, asshat, with lots of exclamation points afterwards. But it's important to realize that more articulate name-calling has just as little weight. A comment like, the author is a self-important dilettante, is really nothing more than a pretentious version of, you are a asshat. Level 1, ad hominem. An ad hominem attack is not quite as weak as mere name-calling. It might actually carry some weight. For example, if a senator wrote an article saying that senators' salaries should be increased, one could respond, well, of course he would say that, he's a senator. But this wouldn't refute the author's argument. It may at least be relevant to the case, though. It's still a very weak form of disagreement. If there's something wrong with the senator's argument, you should say what it is. And if there isn't, what difference does it make that he's a senator? Saying that an author lacks the authority to write about a topic is a variant of ad hominem, and a particularly useless sort, because good ideas often come from outsiders. The question is whether the author is correct or not. If his lack of authority caused him to make mistakes, point those out. If it didn't, then it's not a problem. Level 2, responding to tone. The next level up, we start to see responses to the writing rather than to the writer. The lowest form of these is to disagree with the author's tone. For example, I can't believe the author dismisses intelligent design in such a cavalier fashion. Though better than attacking the author, this is still a weak form of disagreement. It matters much more whether the author is wrong or right than what his tone is, especially since tone is so hard to judge. Someone who has a chip on their shoulder about some topic might be offended by a tone that, to other readers, seemed neutral. So, if the worst thing you can say about someone is to criticize its tone, you're not saying much. If the author is flippant, is the author flippant but correct? It's better that than grave and wrong. And if the author is incorrect somewhere, say where. Level 3, contradiction. In this stage, we finally get responses to what was said, rather than how or by whom. The lowest form of response to an argument is simply to state the opposing case, with little or no supporting evidence. This is often combined with level 2 statements, as in, I can't believe the author dismisses intelligent design in such a cavalier fashion. Intelligent design is a legitimate scientific theory. Contradiction can sometimes have some weight. Sometimes merely seeing the opposing case stated explicitly is enough to see that it's correct. But usually evidence will help. Level 4 is counterargument. At level 4, we reach the first form of convincing disagreement, counterargument. Forms up to this point can usually be ignored as proving nothing. Counterargument might prove something. The problem is, it's hard to say exactly what. Counterargument is contradiction plus reasoning and or evidence. When aimed squarely at the original argument, it can be convincing. But unfortunately, it's common for counterarguments to be aimed at something slightly different. More often than not, two people arguing passionately about something are actually arguing about two different things. Sometimes they even agree with one another, but they're so caught up in the squabble that they don't realize it. There could be a legitimate reason for arguing against something slightly different from what the original author said. That is, when you feel that they missed the heart of the matter. But when you do that, you should say explicitly that you're doing it. Level 5 is refutation. The most convincing form of disagreement is refutation. It's also the rarest, because it's the most work. Indeed, the disagreement hierarchy forms a kind of pyramid in the sense that the higher you go, the fewer instances you find. To refute someone, you probably have to quote them. You have to find a smoking gun, a passage in whatever you disagree with that you feel is mistaken, and then explain why it's mistaken. If you can't find an actual quote to disagree with, you may be arguing with a straw man. Just for a quick recap from yourlogicalfallacyis.com, which is a great resource for logical fallacies. The straw man fallacy is when you misrepresent someone's argument to make it easier to attack, like a warrior sparring with a training dummy or scarecrow. By exaggerating, misrepresenting, or just completely fabricating someone's argument, it's much easier to present your own position as being reasonable. But this kind of dishonesty serves to undermine honest, rational debate. While refutation generally entails quoting, quoting doesn't necessarily imply refutation. Some writers quote parts of things they disagree with to give the appearance of legitimate refutation, and then follow up with a response as low as level 3 or even level 0. Level 6 is refuting the central point. The force of a refutation depends on what you refute. The most powerful form of disagreement is to refute someone's central point. Even as high as level 5, we still sometimes see deliberate dishonesty, as when someone picks out minor points of an argument and refutes those. Sometimes the spirit in which this is done makes it more of a sophisticated form of ad hominem than actual refutation. For example, correcting someone's grammar or harping on minor mistakes in names or numbers. Unless the opposing argument actually depends on such things, the only purpose of correcting them is to discredit one's opponent. Truly refuting something requires one to refute its central point, or at least one of them. And that means one has to commit explicitly to what the central point is. So, a truly effective refutation would look like, the author's main point seems to be X, as he says, quotation. But this is wrong for the following reasons. The quotation you point out as mistaken need not be the actual statement of the author's main point. It's enough to refute something that it depends on. Level 7, make the argument better and then refute its central point. This wasn't in Graham's original essay, but was added on Common Sense Atheism, so I wanted to include it here. This highest level was added by a commenter called Black Belt Bayesian. He writes, when an argument is made, you learn about that argument. But often you also learn about arguments that could have been made, but weren't. Sometimes those arguments work where the original argument doesn't. If you're interested in being on the right side of disputes, you will refute your opponent's arguments. But if you're interested in producing truth, you will fix your opponent's arguments for them. To win, you must fight not only the creature that you encounter, you must fight the most horrible thing that can be constructed from its corpse. This strengthening of your interlocutor's argument is sometimes referred to as steel manning, in contrast to the illegitimate weakening of straw manning. But of course, this takes the most effort of all. What this all means. So now we have a way of classifying forms of disagreement. What good is it? One thing the disagreement hierarchy doesn't give us is a way of picking a winner. Disagreement hierarchy levels merely describe the form of a statement, not whether it's correct. A level 7 response could still be completely mistaken. But while disagreement hierarchy levels don't set a lower bound on the convincingness of a reply, they do set an upper bound. A level 7 response might be unconvincing, but a level 2 or lower response is always unconvincing. The most obvious advantage of classifying the forms of disagreement is that it will help people to evaluate what they read. In particular, it will help them to see through intellectually dishonest arguments. An eloquent speaker or writer can give the impression of vanquishing an opponent merely by using forceful words. In fact, that is probably the defining quality of a demagogue. By giving names to the different forms of disagreement, we give critical readers a pin for popping such balloons. Such labels may help writers too. Most intellectual dishonesty is unintentional. Someone arguing against the tone of something he disagrees with may believe he's really saying something. Zooming out and seeing his current position on the disagreement hierarchy may inspire him to try moving up to counter-argument or refutation. But the greatest benefit of disagreeing well is not just that it will make conversations better, but that it will make the people who have them happier. If you study conversations, you find there's a lot more meanness down on level 1 than up on level 7. You don't have to be mean if you have a real point to make. In fact, you don't want to. If you have something real to say, being mean just gets in the way. If moving up the disagreement hierarchy makes people less mean, that will make most of them happier. Most people don't really enjoy being mean. They do it because they can't help it. And that's the end of Paul Graham's essay. So I'm going to leave it there for today. If you're interested in digging deeper, remember to pick up a copy of How to Have Impossible Conversations by James Lindsay and Peter Goshen. Watch Eva's talk on how to persuade people not to have irrational things, not believe irrational things, on our YouTube channel. And also, and pick up a copy of Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When the Stakes Are High. And watch Ruth's talks about that material also on our YouTube channel. Okay, let's discuss and maybe disagree. Thank you.